what's the word? You know. Hello and welcome to the next video in the mini series about how I vlog, and this is how I physically film the stuff I'm doing. So whether I'm driving or I'm out on the beach or walking Dougal, or as many of you want to know, how I do some of the drone shots, this is the vlog for you. Now this series is called How I Vlog. This is not called How to Vlog, because this is purely how I do it. So disclaimer straight away, you are responsible to make sure that you are safe, your equipment is safe, your equipment is secure, and all other preamble like that. I'm not saying this is the right way of doing things, I'm just saying this is how I do my thing. If you want to do your thing, it's your responsibility to check your local bylaws, privacy laws, and you're responsible for the security of yourself and your equipment. So have you got that? Okay. So we're going to kick off with the easy stuff. I mentioned in my last video about using a smartphone with a selfie stick. So that's always easy to do, or with a mini tripod. I mean, it's all quite straightforward. If you're doing a time lapse, you would put your smartphone on the tripod. But for a lot of the vlogging shots you will be doing, it's just stuff to camera, and this little tripod just held like that is generally absolutely fine. Make sure that little thing doesn't flap, so you hold that in and you can see yourself on the little fold up screen. Really, that's all there is to it. And also when you're trying to film a landscape or something like that, you can either hold it like that or hold it close to you, hold your arms in. That's a little bit stiffer, but if you're trying to do a sweeping shot like that. So that's really just how I do the handheld stuff, just with some kind of a handle, and just try and keep the camera a bit secure, or use a tripod obviously. Now I'm going to do a vlog about the actual vlogging itself, the editing and the actual production of a video or a vlog, and there is always that dilemma between authenticity and professional presentation. And I have found that with some of my favorite YouTubers, where they've really upped the volume on professionalism and made their videos really slick and really full on, they've lost a lot of the authenticity. So I find this is quite a good compromise for me and for the style of this channel, to keep it real but keep it watchable. So I do like that. Whatever you do, of course, is your style. This is just, I'm saying, how I do it. And then of course, as I mentioned before, I use this little microphone here, got the sound recorder going right now, and then I will synchronize those two things in post-production, which hopefully I'll talk about in the next video, about how I actually do the process of making a vlog. So now we move on to a lot of the footage I do a lot of the time, and you'll see that is in the car. And obviously the important thing to remember in the car, your priority is of course safety. Safety of yourself, safety of other road users, road safety. You do not take your eyes off the road. You do not let the camera distract you in any way, shape or form, which is why I find this holder very useful. So what I do is, when I'm stationary, I'll set the camera up, get it rolling, get it in position, check on my phone, yeah, that looks good, and then I'll start driving. Now sometimes you will see just a few seconds of footage in a video that might have come from over 30 minutes of footage in the camera, because it's set up when I'm stationary and then I'll pull in at the next safe place. There's also a lot of, there is gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of footage that I just don't use. If I'm driving along and I feel that the traffic's too heavy, or there's a lorry trying to overtake me, just forget it. You know, do never let the camera distract you in any way, shape or form.
Coming through, man with a van.
However, if you find you're on a nice smooth motorway, there's not much traffic around, it's all very quiet, calm, and you feel confident in doing so, if you can do this without taking your mind off your driving, then I see nothing terribly wrong in just chatting away while you're driving and looking at the road as if you would be to a passenger. So some people have commented that they notice when I'm driving I don't really look at the camera very much. I might glance at it now and again, but it's slightly disengaged with the camera because obviously you're focusing on the driving. But I also find that when I'm driving, that's when I feel at my most, you know, that's when the flow arrives, that's when I just babble away. And I do like to do those while I'm driving, but as I say, safety first, and set that camera up and get it rolling before you set off, and then when you stop, generally a lay-by or something, switch the camera off. This is also great obviously for the views out of the window, so again I have gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of footage just looking at the car window. Then of course you can use this sucker. I mount it on the Airstream windows to get some nice different shots of the rig while you're on the road. You've obviously got to be so careful that this adheres properly, because if it falls off, goodbye £500 worth of camera. So you've got to be so careful that it's really adhered properly. Also, I don't use it on car bodywork or caravan bodywork because I'm frightened it's going to leave a mark. One thing I've noticed when I'm inside the car doing a talkie to the camera, I still use the internal mic in the Sony Action Cam here. Not really satisfactory, but I've still not yet managed to find a way where I can capture voice without it sounding quite distorted. I find the background noise in the car, even with the little microphone here that I've tried with the sound recorder, I've not yet managed to perfect the art of getting the sound right in the car. And I guess I'm also of the opinion that because I'm usually driving on my own, safety first, and I would rather a poorer quality audio than have so many things to worry about and not be focusing on the driving. Now then, before we move on to the drone, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the gimbal that I showed you in the last video, the crane for the big camera that I'm shooting this on now. As I say, lots of disadvantages with that, mainly how heavy it is, and also I have problems sometimes with it vibrating if it's not quite calibrated to the exact gram. I bought this with the intention of putting a nice wide lens on the Sony camera and doing van tours with it, and I quickly found out that it just wasn't suitable, because not only was it making my arms hurt really badly, the stabilization wasn't conducive to looking around a van. It would sort of lurch or it would delay, and it was never pointing where I wanted it to point. So again, for van tours, I just found this was so much better than rigging up that huge gimbal, that crane, and taking the big camera in. So what I've ended up doing with that is, if say for example when I was at the Adria preview, their 2019 preview, I would go around the outside of the caravans and motorhomes with the crane and the posh camera on a high frame rate setting to get that cinematograph. I can never get that word. I prefer to say cinematographic, but I think it's wrong. That cinematographic sort of lovely motion feel on the outside, and then I would cut and go to the little G7X on the tripod and show you around the van. A lot of people have also commented in the vlogs that they prefer that because they feel like they're looking around the van with me, and there are certain channels out there that do an impressively professional job. So I'm not going to try and compete with those channels. I'm just going to be me, and that's why I still prefer to use this and not, oh, it weighs a ton, and not the crane with an equally heavy camera on top. So that's how I do that. And then finally, the bit you've all been waiting for, how I use the drone. First off, if you have any questions about safe use of a drone, I obviously recommend you look at the drone code. I shall put that in the description below. And if you're looking for a YouTube channel all about drone use, I cannot recommend highly enough the channel I Pt2. So again, I'll link to that channel in the description below. That's run by a wonderful guy called Dylan. He speaks a lot of sense, and even though he is a professional drone pilot, he speaks at a real common sense consumer level. So I really heartily recommend you check out Dylan's channel I Pt2. I'll put a link in the description below for any drone related queries or any drone related tutorials that you would like to watch. So when I'm driving and I want to take drone footage at the same time, you have two very conflicting codes, and they are the drone code and the highway code, both of which say you need to be paying 100% full attention to that object, whether you're paying full attention to your drone, keeping it within your line of sight, or paying full attention to driving and not killing anyone, including yourself. How do I get around that? Mostly by enlisting help. It's very, very practically impossible to safely and legally do that on your own. Another reason you see most of my vehicle drone footage here in the Outer Hebrides is because I've got friends here who know how to look out for me, who can maybe be in the car or outside keeping an eye on the drone while I'm driving the outfit. But there are one or two exceptions where I do manage to do a little bit on my own, and we'll talk about that now. Now, everyone wants to hear about the technicalities. What setting do I use? How do I get it to track? How do I do this? I'm sorry to say that the most important thing about filming your vehicle with a drone is nothing to do with the drone itself, the technicalities. It's all to do with planning. Quite often, days and days and days of planning can go into the shortest shot. So when I'm planning, what I'm looking for generally is somewhere where I can safely take footage of the outfit, the camper van, the car, the rig, without interfering with any other road users or anyone else like that. So you may notice that when there is aerial footage of me driving along, say a camper van over a causeway, there is never, ever any other traffic around. So how do I find these locations? Well, I start on the good old internet, on Google Earth, and I'll scout for locations on the internet. Then when I've made a short list of places that I feel may be suitable, I will then check their location on an app. I use NATS, which is an air traffic control service, to tell you which is a no-fly zone or fly with caution. So you check out the location on NATS, and then you go and do a recce in person at the place itself. So there's no alternative but to go there in the car or walk, take the drone and do a site assessment. So you're checking for things like power lines or other road users, airports, obviously things like this, anything with the drone code. So you do a site assessment, and only then, if you're satisfied and you're in a correct zone, you're not in a no-fly zone, then you can try and put the drone up. Obviously the GPS on the drone will tell you whether or not you're in a no-fly zone, if something's changed. When the drone's up, you then actually do your scouting with the drone. You look for angles, you think, oh, that looks really nice, or okay, you plan where the sun's going to be. So much planning. And then after all this, I would say 9 locations out of 10 get rejected for some reason, whether it's safety or power lines or it's on NATS or whatever. I remember in Tarifa in Spain, when I was down there, there was this gorgeous road through a sand dune. It would have looked stunning to take the Airstream through a sand dune and get some footage of it. And I was so fired up to get this footage. When I did my planning phase, I realised it was on military training ground, and that was a complete no-fly zone. So there are so many places and times where I'd love to have done some drone footage, but 9 times out of 10 it just doesn't happen. If you are going to be driving along a highway or something, a very quiet highway, you also need to find places you can stop to set the drone up, get it in the air, get it in position, to film that 2-second shot of your camper van going past, and then another place you can park safely. And up here, that means not in a passing place. and then bring the drone back, or get your co-pilot to bring the drone back. So you've got a place to stop, get the drone in position, drive past, park up, get the drone back. All that for a 2-second shot. So there's a lot of planning, a heck of a lot of planning can go into this. So when the planning is set, I've done the recce, I've done the site assessment, checked that there's no power lines, anything like that, that you're not going to interfere or distract other road users, all that kind of thing. And I've decided that this is a good place. I've got my friend along with me to help, a co-pilot if necessary. Then the next thing to think about is what kind of shots you can do at that location. So there are actually two kinds of shots I do with the drone that you may or may not have noticed. There is the tracking shot, that's the one that everyone loves, where the drone goes around the moving car. And then there's the stationary shot, and that's basically where you put the drone into the air, leave it there in position, and then hit record, get in the car, drive along, and then get to where you're going, stop, and then bring the drone back, or get your co-pilot to bring the drone back. Now, everyone loves these tracking shots, but generally I will only do those on private ground. So the way I do a tracking shot where the drone's going around the car, generally I will look for somewhere off the road normally. There's no other traffic around, it's very controlled, or as controlled as it can be. And then there is a wonderful feature on the DJI drones called Follow Me, and you can have the drone follow the car. You draw a little picture around the car on the display, and then the drone will do what it needs to do. Obviously the drone can only fly up to about 20 miles an hour, so if you want the impression of speed, it's quite easy. You just speed the footage up, that's all you do. So ideally, again, you would have a co-pilot keeping an eye on the drone while you are doing that. When I was in Spain, different rules apply in Spain anyway, but I could actually manage to drive the car at 10 miles an hour on private ground and keep an eye on the drone at the same time. But that was really, really tough, and I don't really recommend doing that. Get a co-pilot if you can. And then the other kind of shot, which is much easier, is a stationary shot. The drone's in the air, you drive along, and basically what you do is in post-production, when you're editing, you use a technique called Ken Burns, which is when the frame zooms in, and you use that technique to give you the impression that the drone is actually flying towards the outfit, whereas actually it's not, it's stationary in the air. So that is the way I do. If there's the chance of other traffic coming along, you don't want other drivers being distracted by a drone that's too close to the road or that's moving, so I leave it out of the way, and then I will use this technique called Ken Burns to edit that feeling of movement into the frame. So there you have it. That is really how I do my filming. Some of you may be disappointed to know that I actually get an assistant sometimes to help me with the drone footage if I'm driving, but there's no other proper safe way of satisfying both the drone code and the highway code without a second pair of eyes on the drone or someone to drive for you. But as my friend isn't insured to drive my car for me, she keeps her eye on the drone for me instead, and knows how to bring it down safely if there's any change of circumstance. And once again, just a reminder that it is personal responsibility. It's your responsibility to make sure that your kit is safe. And for example, if you're attaching your camera to the window and it falls off, don't blame me. You've got to make sure that that is completely adhered, or if you smash anything, that's, you know, everything is your responsibility, I'm afraid. I'm just saying this is how I do my filming. I hope you found it useful. Once again, if you want any more tutorials about drone use, I highly recommend Dylan's channel iCopter. Put a link in the description below. If you have any further questions, please do leave them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them, but I get a lot of questions now. If I don't get to your question, I do apologise in advance. But I hope you found it useful. As ever, if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you don't already. The next video in this series, whether it's the next one on the channel or not, I'm not sure yet, but the next video in this series will be about the process, how I actually design the 3 kinds of video that I do. So do come back and join us again soon for that, but it just leaves me to say, in the meantime, from the beautiful Outer Hebrides, from Dougal and from me, thanks for tuning in. Are you upset that I've given all the trade secrets away, Dougal? I haven't told them that you can fly the drone. It's all right. I haven't told them. No, your secret's safe. I know you are the brains of the outfit. He never smiles.